Hi, my name is Vanessa Brown, and I'm an Education and Outreach Coordinator at the Statewide Legal Services of Connecticut. This video will explain the basics of climate change. It is the first video in a series discussing the connection between climate change, natural disasters, and disaster legal concerns for Connecticut residents. The Statewide Legal Services of Connecticut maintains a website which provides free legal information that is easy to understand and reviewed by lawyers for accuracy. We will be adding more disaster legal information to our website for the next few months, so check back for updates. To visit our webpage, you can scan the QR code on the right side of the screen, or you can go to www.ctlawhelp.org and search for disaster assistance. This video will cover the basics of climate change. First, we will define climate change. What exactly is it? Next, we'll go over the difference between weather and climate. Then, we'll discuss the causes of climate change. How did it start and what is driving it? Lastly, I will help you understand the evidence for climate change. How do we know this is really happening? We'll start with a trivia question. You can pause the video and think about your answer. Which statement about climate change is true? 1. Earth's temperature is changing naturally. 2. Human beings are producing greenhouse gases, and this is increasing Earth's temperature. 3. Greenhouse gases can affect Earth's temperature, but human beings cannot affect Earth's temperature. 4. Human beings are producing greenhouse gases, and this is decreasing Earth's temperature. Got your answer? Keep it in your head, and we will reveal the correct answer in a bit. Climate change is a temperature shift that is happening around the world. While Earth's temperature has changed naturally in the past, the temperature shift happening right now is not natural. So what is causing climate change as we know it today? Heat. The sun heats our planet, and that heat is absorbed by the atmosphere. The atmosphere is a layer of gases that surround our planet like a blanket. There are different types of gases in our atmosphere, and some of them absorb heat better than others. Those gases are called greenhouse gases. They exist naturally in our atmosphere, and they are also produced when humans burn things. Burning oil, burning gasoline, burning coal, and even burning wood all produce greenhouse gases. When there are more greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, it is able to hold even more of the sun's heat, so our planet becomes warmer. This is global warming. You may have heard of this term before because human beings have produced a lot of greenhouse gases, and we are actually raising the temperature of our atmosphere in our entire planet. Our climate depends on temperature, so the result of global warming is climate change. Now back to our first trivia question. Which statement about climate change is true? Number 2. Human beings are producing greenhouse gases, and this is increasing Earth's temperature, thereby causing climate change. We know climate change is happening because scientists have been collecting climate and weather data for many years. The key words here are weather and climate because these two things are not the same. Here's our next trivia question. Once again, you can pause the video to think about your answer. Which two statements are true? 1. Weather is short-term, it changes every day. 2. Climate is short-term, it changes every day. 3. Weather is long-term, it changes over the course of decades. 4. Climate is long-term, it changes over the course of decades. Got your answer? Keep it in your head, and we will reveal the correct answer in a bit. All of the weather we experience, rainfall, snowfall, sunny days, is all caused by the sun's heat moving throughout the atmosphere and around the world. Most of the sun's heat is aimed at the equator, which is why it's always nice and toasty in tropical countries. However, the sun's heat does not stay at the equator. Heat travels around the world in many different ways, and this movement of heat creates what we call weather. Let's break down a rainy day. Heat from the sun is absorbed by the atmosphere. Then heat from the atmosphere is absorbed by the ocean. When the ocean absorbs a lot of heat, water begins to evaporate into the sky. Water vapor, also called steam, floats into the air and gathers into clouds. Clouds are just massive amounts of water floating above us. High in the sky, it is colder up there than it is on land. So the water vapor, aka clouds, go high into the sky and it loses its heat to the surrounding cold air. As that happens, the water vapor cools down and turns back into liquid water. Liquid water is heavy, so it falls from the sky. And then the weather forecast calls for rain. In summary, rain is caused by heat moving from the sun to the oceans. The heat is carried into the sky by water vapor. That heat is lost to the surrounding air, and then it rains. Rain is just a part of the process of heat moving around the world. All of the weather we experience is heat moving throughout the atmosphere. Weather is what the atmosphere is doing right now. If the atmosphere is tossing heat between the ocean and the sky, then our weather is rainy. If the atmosphere is tossing heat up really high into the sky and then back down, we get snow. If the atmosphere has really cold air in one area and slightly warmer air nearby, the cool air rushes towards the warm air and our weather is windy. Weather is whatever the atmosphere is doing right now. Weather is always changing because the atmosphere is always changing. What the atmosphere is doing when you're on the way to work can be very different from what the atmosphere is doing on your way home in the evening. That's because weather lasts for a few hours up to a few days. Overall, weather is short term. So what does this have to do with climate change? Well, we're getting there. Scientists have hundreds of gadgets floating and flying in the sky to gather data on what the atmosphere is doing. Scientists use this data to create our weather forecasts. There are weather monitoring stations across Connecticut, and there are 2 stations in New Haven. The first is Griswold Park in Fairhaven, and the other is at Tweed Airport on the Eastern Shore. The weather data collected by these stations is free to the public. So on the next few slides, you will see actual weather data from these 2 weather stations in New Haven, Connecticut. Here is a daily forecast for New Haven. Every day, scientists gather data on the temperature, humidity, air pressure, fog, and more. The forecast for each day becomes one data point. Scientists then use this data to make comparisons about the weather over time. You can zoom out and compare the weather data for each day in a week. Here, we can see the beginning of this week was warmer than the end of the week. You can zoom out even more to compare the weather data for multiple weeks in a month. Here, we can see the 2nd and 3rd weeks for May had more rain than the 1st and 4th weeks. Zoom out some more to compare the weather data for multiple months in a year. These are the daily average temperatures from January to May 2024. Here, we can see that January and February were about the same temperature. All of this is real New Haven weather data. So there are many M's on this table because those days have not happened yet. Zoom out even more to compare the weather for multiple years. Here is the highest and lowest temperature for every May 9th, going back to May 9th, 2002. Zoom out all of the way and you can compare weather data for multiple decades. Here is the record high temperature for each day of the year from 1948 to 2024. When you make comparisons between weather that has happened over the course of 3 or more decades, you are now looking at climate data. In other words, climate is the average of 30 or more years of weather. Weather zooms in really close and tells us what the atmosphere is doing right now. Climate zooms far out and gives us a summary of what the atmosphere has been doing for the past 30 years or more. I often hear people say, I'm not sure about this whole climate change thing because where I'm from, the climate changes every day. Well, that's not possible because climate is a measure of at least 30 years, and 30 years cannot change in one day. Weather is short-term and exact. Climate is a long-term summary. Back to our second trivia question. Which two statements are true? 1. Weather is short-term, it changes every day. And 4. Climate is long-term, it changes over the course of decades. Now that we know what climate is, how do we know it is actually changing? To measure the weather and climate in the modern era, scientists collect data from weather monitoring stations. However, scientists can also collect data about the climate of the past by analyzing rocks and fossils. Scientists find evidence of climate change by comparing ancient and modern climate data. Do you remember earlier I said the Earth's temperature has changed naturally in the past? That is what this graph demonstrates. This graph displays Earth's temperatures from 18,000 years ago up until 1900. With all of the ups and downs, Earth's temperature has increased by nearly 4 degrees Celsius in the last 20,000 years. In the US, we measure temperature using Fahrenheit, so that's about 7.2 degrees to us. Humans have existed on Earth for about 200,000 years. But when measuring the impact we have had on Earth's climate, we count the changes that have happened since 1900, because this is when we began using fossil fuels and adding large amounts of greenhouse gases to our atmosphere. That leads me to the third trivia question. Since 1900, how much has Earth's temperature increased? A, 0.025 degrees, B, 4 degrees, C, 10 degrees, or D, 2 degrees. I won't make you wait for this one. The answer is on the next slide. Since 1900, human beings have increased the average global temperature by about 2 degrees. That does not seem like a lot. However, we caused this change in 120 years, and it usually takes Earth a couple of thousand years to increase by 2 degrees. Not only are humans increasing the temperature, we are causing the temperature to increase faster than it ever has before. In comparison to running, an 8-minute mile is considered a nice time for someone in good shape. Human beings are changing the temperature so quickly, it's like we are running a 60-second mile. It is incomprehensible just how quickly human beings are changing the Earth. Since 1900, Earth's average global temperature has increased by 2 degrees. However, this is just an average. Every place on Earth is not warming at the same pace. Connecticut is warming much faster than the global average. Since 1900, our state's temperature has increased by 3 degrees. And in the next 30 years, Connecticut's average temperature will increase another 1 to 2 degrees. That's like running a 10-second mile. While Earth's temperature has changed naturally in the past, the changes taking place now are happening at a rapid and unnatural pace. So, what does all of this mean for Connecticut? Remember, weather is how heat moves throughout the atmosphere. As a result, our rapidly increasing temperature will have dramatic effects on our weather. In the next video, we will discuss how climate change will affect the weather in Connecticut. Here's the summary for this video. What is climate change? A change in the average global temperature. What is causing climate change? Human beings are producing large amounts of greenhouse gases by burning fossil fuels to power our cars, factories, and homes. How do we know climate change is really happening? By comparing climate data from thousands of years ago with modern climate data, scientists have noticed the average global temperature has increased rapidly since 1900, which is just when humans began producing large amounts of greenhouse gases. Will Connecticut be affected by climate change? Yes. Connecticut is warming faster than other parts of the world, even faster than other parts of the United States, and this will affect our local weather. Thank you for watching our video on the basics of climate change. In the next video, we will discuss how climate change will affect the weather in Connecticut. Visit www.ctlawhelp.org for more information on climate change, natural disasters, and disaster legal concerns. This video series is a part of a project called Access to Resources for Climate Change. ARC is brought to you by the Statewide Legal Services of Connecticut and the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven.